Hello guys, and welcome to another Tech Fusion episode. I'm Alex, your host, same as always, and we do hope that you're having a very wonderful start in this crypto new year. Before we can actually jump into today's video, I would first like to congratulate Noobster. Congrats, buddy, you have just won $100 in Ethereum, so definitely go on ahead and check your Ethereum wallet. We'll pin the comment down in the box of the video where we have announced the giveaway, and as well you'll find in there the Etherscan network address so you can check the transaction going on through. And if you haven't won the giveaway, then don't fret, we have just another giveaway, so stick around with us in this video because we'll give away all the details so you can enter the new giveaway, since our plan is to make a giveaway every month into trying to help out the community, especially if you're at the beginning. They're not going to be a huge amount of money, but anyway, it's going to be something that will definitely help you moving forward, especially if you're looking into buying better supporting gear for your GPUs moving forward into this crypto endeavor. So once again, guys, today's video sponsor is us, Tech Fusion, where we are going to give away $250. And the way you can enter this giveaway is actually quite simple. Same as last time, be subscribed to the channel, have a valid email address under your YouTube name, leave a positive comment in the box of this video down below. And as well, if you're not asking too much, maybe consider subscribing over to our Discord server. So the links is going to be down in the box below. The rules of the giveaways are actually quite straightforward and simple. After 30 days of publishing the video on the YouTube platform, we will be using one of those random comment pickers from YouTube. If you are lucky enough to be the one that commented to our video and we choose you, then we'll cross-check our database to see that you are an active subscriber to our channel. Of course, we'll have to go over and find your email address, so that's why it's very important for you to have an active and listed email address under your own YouTube channel name. And from there, we're just going to be sending you an email. So that email is going to come from techfusion21@gmail.com. We're not going to be using any other sort of email. And the only question that we're going to have for you in that email is your Ethereum wallet address. Nothing else. We're not going to be asking any sort of personal information. So don't give out any sort of personal information to anybody, because if somebody asks for them, it's not us. So don't do it, just to stay on the safe side. Right, guys, so this is just our small token, something that we can give back to the ever-growing community. So thank you very much, guys, for choosing to stay with us. And this would definitely not be happening without your continuous involvement. So thank you once again, guys, and we do hope to see you again in future videos and as well in future giveaways. So this being said, I wish you all very good luck, and hopefully I'll be talking to you in 30 days asking you for your Ethereum address wallet. Maybe you're at the beginning, you have not set up your mining operations just yet, or maybe you have already started out on your crypto mining endeavor, have a few GPUs like we have here over at Tech Fusion, and you're just trying to get the best out of them. I would like to show you exactly how you can set everything up on the safe side without having to worry about any potential fire hazard. First things first, here in Europe, we have to abide by some sort of limitations from the power provider. So whenever you have a contract with a power provider into your own house or home or wherever, you might have a warehouse or something where you're keeping your GPUs, that's all up to you. You might have one of these contracts acting up. Right, so these contracts that I am talking about mean how much watts you can use of electricity at any given time in a certain location. So for instance, in my location right here, we have a maximum of 4,000 watts of electricity that we can use at any given time. So if we jump over the 4,000 watts of electricity, simply said, we're just going to be running out of power, because between me and the main lines outside, there is a certain intelligent circuit breaker that is automatically disconnected whenever that threshold is reached or surpassed. This limitation is definitely something that is affecting me, but depending on the region in the world you are watching this video from, you should definitely check that with your provider to see if you have some sort of clause in your contract. Because if you do have it, then you should definitely be aware of it before you can start mining, because if you overdo your mining stuff, then you could definitely risk of remaining without power in that particular location. Second of all, we have to talk about the fuse box in your house, and then of course the rating of the fuses that you're having and the maximum wattage that you can use for your GPUs, and all down is going to trickle down to the cable that you are using with the particular GPUs. So yeah, let's jump into the fuse box and I'll see you guys over there. So guys, just to keep things simple here, first of all, it all comes down to whatever electricity standard that you are running on. So for instance, I'm in Europe. So in Europe, we are running the 220 volt system. This is the standard for most of the appliances that we are running right here. But you might be coming from, I don't know, other countries in the world where you have the 110 volt system. So this is definitely the first thing to consider before you start up your shop or before you start up your mining operations. The second factor over here is the rating of the individual circuit breakers for your outlets. So this is very important because you take this rating of your circuit breaker and you multiply with the standard that you're having, and that should give you a rough estimate of what is the total amount of voltage that you can draw from your electrical outlets. So as you can see on this digital readout of my 32 amps fuse over here, we are running right now 238 volts. which is quite a bit higher than the 220, which is the standard. But most of the countries have a standard, and well, you won't see it fixed at 220. Of course, there's going to be some variations, and most of the appliances do take this into consideration, so they have a certain safety margin built into them, so you can run a little bit more than 220 volts. So it doesn't really matter how much current comes into your junction box. What you have to take into consideration is the standard. So if we take the 220 volts, which we're running here in Europe, and we multiply it by the 16 amps, which is the rating of one of these circuit breakers that holds the electrical outlets, then we arrive at around 3,500 volts or so, which is the absolute maximum rating for our outlets. So that's the maximum amount of voltage that we can run from a particular single outlet that runs through this circuit breaker. All the electrical conduits running from the wall, or I should say from the junction box through the circuit breaker and through the wall and to the electrical outlet which you plug your GPUs in, are rated for at least the value of the circuit breaker right here if it's done properly, so you shouldn't have any problems if you do so. But anyway, as a good practice, I would recommend that you actually spread out your load through more than just one outlet, so that way you will spread the load or spread the voltage used through certain, or I should say through more than just one circuit breaker, making things even and just overall increasing or decreasing the temperature in the electrical outlets. Alright guys, so now moving to the other topic at hand here. So we have determined that we can use around 2,800 watts from that outlet over there, because that is applying the 80% rule. So the next thing to determine, of course, once we have a rig up and running, is to of course determine the amount of watts that a GPU is actually requiring for its use, and to determine that the PSU can actually deliver that amount of watts, so that we are choosing the right PSU. And of course the connection between the GPU right there and the PSU right here is actually met with some up to standard cabling. So that means that your cables can actually withstand the amount of voltage that they are required to actually pass through from the PSU to the GPU for an extended amount of time without having them to fail, or without having them fail and causing any sort of accidents. Right guys, so covering the basics here, first of all we have this RTX 3080 LHR card. I have already done a bunch of videos with this card, so if you're interested in something like OC settings and how you can get this card to perform very well under the Ethereum hash rate algorithm, which is doing at around 80 mega hashes a second, you can definitely check the video up here for those settings. Otherwise, just carry on with the video here. So first of all, I want to mention that any type of card, regardless if it's the RTX 3080 or maybe an RTX 3090, or maybe an even, I don't know, an older Sapphire R9 390 like the one that I have down there, it has a bunch of inputs that it can take power from. So the first port that we are actually going to cover is the PCIe Express lane. So this is the port over here. This is the port that actually the GPU connects through the to the motherboard using this port over here. And this is going to draw a maximum of 75 watts from the motherboard using this port. So this is something that is pretty standard in the industry so far anyway. So regardless if it's an RTX 3080 or R9 390 like the one that I have there, a very old card, or maybe this RTX 3090, all of them can draw a maximum of 75 watts from this PCIe Express lane over here, so from this connector over here. The rest of the total wattage that the GPU can actually take is going to be provided to the actual GPU using these PCIe connectors over here. So depending on which type of card that you are having, maybe an RTX 3080 or something similar to this might have two connectors over here, or maybe this RTX 3090 like the one that I'm having here has actually 3 ports over here, or maybe that old card over there, the R9 390, once again has 2 ports as well. But regardless of the makes and models, the rest of the PSU's power is going to be provided using these ports over here, and they're actually the heavy lifter, so to say. So this is the, I would say around 80 or 85% of the total watts of the GPU, or the total rating of a GPU. It's actually going to be provided by these ports over here. So this being said, we have just covered the fact that the PCI Express here can actually take in a maximum of 75 watts. And given the fact that this RTX 3080 can have a maximum TDP of 320 watts, that means the rest of the 245 watts that have to be covered in order to reach the full potential of this card can be and will be delivered to this card using these PCIe Express, or I should say PCIe ports over here. But one thing to keep in mind, and actually very important, is that you can never actually know for sure which of the inputs is actually going to provide most of the power to the GPU. This is going to happen by itself. Basically the GPU is going to analyze its situation or its usage requirements So it's going to decide for itself how much watts is going to be drawing from which input. So that means you can either have a situation where it's going to draw less than 75 watts from the PCI Express port over there and more from the PCIe port over here. Or vice versa, it can go all the way up to maximum 75 watts, drawing the rest of the input or the rest of the power through these ports over here. So this being covered, guys, this is the GPU side of things. So we have just determined the maximum TDP, which is actually very important. You have to determine the maximum TDP of your GPU before you can or should be able to choose the right PSU for you. So this has a 320. Definitely go ahead and check for your specific make or model on the GPU-Z website how much is the TDP of your precise GPU or the GPU that you are using before you go ahead and choose one of the PSUs that you might be interested in. Because definitely the PSU has to cover both your GPU or GPUs if you're running multiple GPUs using the same PSU in order to cover the wattage draw, or I should say the electricity need of those GPUs. So just a quick demonstration here. For this example, I'm using this Seasonic 750 watts, which is the Connect version. This is a modular power supply. It actually allows me to have some sort of flexibility with my rig in the sense that you don't have all the power inputs on the PSU side itself. You just have an input over here, and then using this cable, of course, you are going to connect to this modular piece right here, which, well, sticks with neodymium magnets to any side of your case or any side of your rig, giving you that added flexibility. But apart from this, and moving forward with the video here, I am going to now cover the topic of power and cables to your GPU. So just to quickly cover things here, as I've said before, this is a 750 watts power supply, which is more than adequate to provide power to my 320 watt CDP card right here. But of course, this is going to happen long term using the cables. And the cables are the, well, I should say lifeline between the power coming from the PSU and going to the GPU. And since you're going to be running these cables very hot for an extended amount of time, it is actually paramount that you actually choose cables which are appropriate for the type of operations that you are running. So for instance, if you plan to run your cards long time doing, I don't know, Ethereum mining, it is very important that you don't exceed the maximum rating of these cables, because otherwise you're definitely going to have a fire hazard on your hands. So I will show you an example where you might have to use something that comes not included with the PSU. So coming in with the PSUs, definitely you're going to have some sort of cables. Like the Seasonic 750 watts here has cables like this, which are labeled PCIe on one side and PSU on one side. So that is just basically an 8-pin connector on one side that goes over to the PSU side. And of course, as the name implies here, the other cable goes into the PCIe Express port over here on your GPU. These, of course, if you look closely here, you can find some sort of writing on the cable. So that is the actual rating of the cables themselves. So as you can see here, if this would focus a little bit, you'd see there is an 80 degrees maximum. And of course, a 300 watts right afterwards. So there you go, 300 watts. So that means that these cables are actually rated to withstand operations of 80 degrees Celsius with 300 watts maximum running through them. So this cables right here can actually take in quite a lot. And that basically means that you can actually use the stock cables that come with your PSU, like the ones that I have here, and run them directly to your GPU. And you can actually use them for an extended amount of time without any sort of problem. This PSU right here, this is, or I should say this GPU right here, this is the RTX 3090, has a slightly higher TDP, but anyway, being covered by 3 8-pin connectors over here, it is more than adequate that this PSU can deliver the power supply needs of this GPU without any sort of problem for a very long time. So once that we have covered this, of course, you can find yourself in the odd position or in the odd situation where you might need a cable extension like the one that I'm running here, where you have a single lead, probably because you're going to be constrained or restricted by your PSU power outputs. Let's say you don't have enough of them to run to your PSU. So if I should only have one of these ports available to me and one of these cables remaining, then that means that I could definitely or should just be able to power only one of these ports over here. And that's a big no-no. Of course, you can't run any GPU without covering both the ports for its power needs. So this being the case, of course, you might find yourself in the situation where you might have to run one of these extension cables over here. Now, of course, these are made in China like probably the rest of the things here, but I would not trust the quality assurance of these cables as much as I do cables from reputable brands of PSUs. So that's why I will show you here an extension cord just like the one I used or showed you there. For instance, if we take a reading of the rating of these cables here, you can actually see it says 80 degrees Celsius with 300 watts, which is definitely the same as the stock cable coming from Seasonic over here. But I'm going to show you what happened to this cable. And as you can see, there is obviously blackening or charring of the plastic over there. And while touching this over here, this plastic bit, when the card was mining, it was definitely getting very, very hot to the touch. Although I was using this as an extension cable over here, and this was, I think, was downcloaked, and the GPU overall was drawing in around 240 watts maximum. This definitely happened to the cable, although it should not have happened to it, because as you can see, the rating of this cable was of 300 watts. And of course, out of the 200 and, or I should say 320 maximum TDP of the card, just around 70 watts were actually taken in by the PCIe Express lane over here, because I was monitoring this using hardware info. So the rest was actually taken in by the GPU using the 8-pin connectors over here. And this should have definitely not happened, and as you can see, it still did happen. So yeah, I would be extremely cautious when choosing to use some of these cables, because, well, nobody can vouch for the actual rating of these cables. So even though there is something written on the cables, you must definitely take precautions when using them, and definitely check them very often to try and figure out if they are still okay, and maybe just consider replacing them altogether with a different PSU, maybe a PSU that has more or bigger capacity with a lot more ports, so that you can definitely use it to run your GPUs with the stock cables that those PSUs are coming with. Something like this, although unexpected, might happen. I don't know if mine was just a failure waiting to happen. Maybe it was something wrong with it during its production. But yeah, just definitely take care of your cables and the cabling that you are using for your PSUs. Because overall, these are very expensive hardwares, that pieces of hardware that you are getting, and you definitely don't want anything to happen to them, as you might have a lot of your budget involved with them. So definitely you don't want I don't know, a few bucks of cabling to ruin everything for you. So another cable that we are going to talk about is, of course, the SATA cables, or these SATA extending cables. First of all, your GPU, it's a bit hard to do this one-handed, but when it's going to connect to this over here, like so, then, well, definitely connect it all the way, like so. All right. Now you have to power this device using, of course, the 6-pin over here, and of course a USB connector that goes on your motherboard. So yeah, definitely giving power to this sort of way should at least have you wondering if it can actually deliver the 75 watts of power required by the PCIe Express lane over here of the GPU. So in order to power this GPU to its maximum potential and actually give it the full 75 watts available power to the PCI Express over here, you should use one of these cables. This is just a 6-pin connector to another 6-pin connector over here. So this end would actually go in there, and the other end would actually go on your PSU side of things. So as you can see here, we have a peripheral IDE SATA or Molex 6-pin connector on the PSU side. So this cable right here is actually rated to give you the 75 watts availability in power that your GPU requires. If we look on the cable itself, its actual rating is, of course, same as before. It says it's rated to 80 degrees. There we go, 80 degrees with 300 watts. So same like this cable's over here. It says 300 watts. So we are actually going to just use a maximum of 75 watts. So that's 3 times as less as the maximum rating of one of these cables. I would definitely consider that it is capable of delivering the 75 watts. If it doesn't, then I don't know, all these Chinesium garbage pieces of doohickeys are actually, as I said, garbage. But this should be fine anyway overall, because it should be able to withstand and deliver the 75 watts of power that is required by your GPU using the PCI Express connector over here. So these sort of cables should be okay, because you're using substantially less than its maximum rating that is written on the cable. Otherwise, if you don't have cables such as this one, or you might not even have the 6-pin power from your PSU available to you, you might find yourself in a situation where you have to use one of these cables right here. And this is just a regular 6-pin output like the one that I have here. So this is the 6-pin output that it's required by this doohickey that goes on the PCI Express lane of your GPU, but it's actually powered from a SATA connector. So this is just a good old regular SATA connector that can plug into your PSU using some of the leads like the one here. It can plug into that, and of course the output will be of this 6-pin connector over here that goes into your GPU. Now do keep in mind that if you are using a cable such as this, it could be a cable, maybe a stock cable from your PSU, or maybe a third-party cable like this Chinesium Premium over here. This can actually deliver a maximum of 35 watts only to this connector over here. So in case your GPU might require more than 35 watts, because as we've determined it can actually take a maximum of 75, you can have problems with these cables in the terms of, I don't know, maybe having at least your GPU crash because of the lack of power that it requires, or maybe even a potential fire hazard on your hands. Although you might think it can't draw the amount of power, it might actually try to get more power, or try to push more, or try to suck in more electricity through this cable in such a way that it can actually be a potential fire hazard. Right, so these are definitely things that you should keep in mind. If you use the proper cabling, 75 watts out of this 6-pin to 6-pin power connector over here, that's perfectly fine. If you use the SATA connector, definitely maximum of 35 watts, so use something like hardware info to monitor the activity of your GPU, to make sure that using the settings that you have just set up your GPU in mining, you're not going to exceed those 35 watts from your GPU. And otherwise, try to keep to stock cables, using your, I don't know, reputable brands of PSUs, because, well, definitely this is an investment worth keeping and worth checking out or looking out for. Don't forget, guys, you can leave your thoughts and comments down in the box below, so we'll do our best, just as always, to answer each and every one of you for every of the questions that you have. And as well, don't forget to check out the Discord server where you can join and hopefully enlarge our community over there as well. Thank you guys once again, and see you in the next one.